Sarah Gardner, also known as Juicy S of Juicy S Art. I am a mom, a lawyer, a mixed media artist, and teacher. I love to create multi-layered mixed media art journal pages and lots of small, shareable art. I even wrote a book about shareable art called Share Your Joy. My book is about enjoying the process of creating and then sharing that joy by sending your art away and making someone's day. Doodle Vocab is a feature of my book. The concept of Doodle Vocab came out of my practice of keeping track of the various doodles and marks that I like to use to finish my mixed media artwork. I often complete my journal spreads or other mixed media art projects like shareable art with doodling. Lots of details and doodling. Adding details and doodles and marks of my own to my art journal pages or my mixed media shareable art is a meditative process that I really enjoy, and I honestly feel that these details add a lot of depth and character to my work. The concept of Doodle Vocab started with this little notebook where I kept track of some of my favorite doodles and marks. It's a glossary of marks that I've used in the past or ones that inspire me. It's an easy-to-use reference that helps me stay in flow as I'm finishing up my mixed media projects. I decided, however, that I wanted to be a little bit more organized with this. So I created this Doodle Vocab glossary sheet that I can fill in with my doodles, name them, and even have fun looking at them when I want to choose one. I filled these sheets in and then tipped them into this sketchbook, but I also tipped in a couple of blank sheets so that I can continue filling in my glossary. This sheet is actually a pullout from my book, but if you subscribe to my website, juicy-s.net, there's a link in the description box, I'll send you a PDF version via email. You can see that I'm entering or logging in these doodles into my glossary using a black pen, and I tend to use microns quite often. I will use various nib sizes depending on the kind of mark that I want to make. And although I don't show you here, if I'm doing something that's pretty intricate and it's more illustrative or drawing-like, I might draw it in pencil and then ink it over with a micron. And of course, when I'm adding these types of doodles and marks into my art journal pages or any other mixed media art that I'm finishing up, I will use different types of tools to create these doodles. I may use a Stabilo Marksaw to create those little X's into my art journal pages. Or instead of using a brush pen like I'm going to do here, I'll use a paintbrush to create the marks. So this glossary is just a reference and a reminder, because really the possibilities are endless. You've got pencils, you've got brushes, you've got paint pens, you've got drawing pens. There's so many different tools you can use and so many different doodles you can make that this really helps me keep my head together with so many possibilities available. And of course, naming your doodles is totally optional. I mean, I don't necessarily know why I started doing this. It's just, maybe it's handier. I don't know. It's actually kind of fun to come up with the names though. Another way that I use these doodles and marks is to create high contrast collage material. I call these papers art papers. Essentially, it's just your own patterned collage paper that is black and white or black and off-white. I'll use these papers in my art journal as part of a background, maybe to tame the blank page, adding just a layer of collage onto the pages of my art journals to start, and then layer over that. It adds some interest and some detail underneath all those layers. And I'll also sometimes just add a piece of this to a collage to add interest, detail, and contrast.
Some of the more detailed patterned papers that I create with a pen, I like to scan or copy so that I have plenty of collage art paper to use and I don't have to worry about tearing up my original. You can see that there is quite a variety of art paper in this little box. Some has been painted on, some has been stenciled, and of course there are doodles and some different types of handwriting and even some letter stamped words. I'm just going to show you how I create some of these art papers to use in collage. I've got here some vintage ledger and vintage lined paper, and I like to use these papers to create these kind of woven patterns using the lines in the paper as guides to create these geometric, interesting patterns. Doodling and mark making and creating these art papers is for me a very meditative process. I am a detail-oriented person. I don't know if that's part of it, but it is fun for me. It's also something that just doesn't take a lot of effort or concentration. And if I don't have time or I feel uninspired in any way and I want to get in my little bit of creativity for the day, I might just make 1/2 sheet of these little doodled art papers. And if I need an idea for a doodle in this process, all I have to do is reference my Doodle Vocab Glossary. For me, this is relaxing. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as crooked lines and a brush mark with a Tombow brush pen. This tiered arches doodle is one of my favorites. I love the way it shows up in my art journal backgrounds as well as in my collages. This Tombow dual tip marker is a fun one to use because it does have both of those tips, and I like the wider nib for some of these marks. They're bolder and the contrast is a little bit better. But I also know that Tombow markers are not waterproof, so I'm not going to be using this art paper under any kind of wet media. I thought I would show you a few projects and journal pages featuring some of these doodles. This is a series of postcards that I created, and you can see that some of the doodles have doodles around them. So I may create a brush mark with some acrylic ink and then use a micron pen or a white gel pen to outline those marks. That's how kind of crazy the detail can get. I created this web-like doodle with a white paint pen. And this other junk journal of mine, I created this little feather doodle based on the feathers in her hairpiece here. Some of my doodles are inspired by Zentangles, like this one on the left. And on the right side of the spread, underneath Breathe, there's a doodle I like to call Tendrils that I created with a fine nib micron pen. Here you see some hash marks, some white dots, and of course my little favorite lotus flower doodle. This meandering vine doodle was actually inspired by the collage paper that's down here. So I just continued that pattern into the black parts of the spread. In this spread, you can see some of the papers that I used in the collage layer down below the other layers that are on top. And this circle kind of grid doodle is a super fun one. I don't always incorporate it because, as you can see, it's pretty detailed. And I love this little black vines circle around the images. And all the clustered circles in this spread were created using acrylic ink and a dip pen. Here I've got some scribbly doodles around my images and then a lot of meandering little tiny hearts going across the spread. Here are some lotus themed doodles, and I created these with a fine brush and some white acrylic ink. Here you can see that I've got some squiggle doodles in white gel pen, along with quite a few other doodles. Here we have the lotus flower again. I created these with paint and a brush, and then I added detail with a gold gel pen. And speaking of gold gel pen, that is what I used to create these rays that are coming off of this golden sun behind my leaping monk among the cacti. Here's a spread in progress, and those little red botanicals will probably get some more detail later on. Here's a spread that features the radial dots that I like to use sometimes in a circle, my roses that I doodled onto some sticky note and then cut out and pasted in, and a thorny vine that meanders across the pages. I could say doodles all day instead of rosé all day, because sometimes these things do take me quite a bit of time.
I hope this video inspires you to start doodling. I joke sometimes that I have a crazy doodle gene because honestly, I could doodle for days, for hours, on end. I think the process of adding these repetitive marks into my artwork is very calming and meditative. I can lose track of time and really get into flow. And all the little details that I add to an art paper or my art journal pages or my shareable art end up giving it that unique look that's just my own. Plus, the finished artwork is really fun to look at because there's lots to see. Even if you don't have the crazy doodle gene like I do, keeping track of your doodles and marks like this can be fun. At the very least, I find that it makes creating a little easier. I would love to see your doodles, so please share them and your joy with me. You can leave a comment below, or you can tag me on Instagram at juicy.s.art.